guest on this week, a chap called Joseph Jaffe. I've known him back since the agency days when he had his agency Crayon and I had my agency IQ Million Group. So I guess that'd be maybe 2006. We ran into each other. He's a very interesting and a slightly eccentric guy, I have to say. As a fellow eccentric guy, I don't throw stones in glass houses. So I mean that with love. Very smart. He's written 5 books on top of being an entrepreneur. The first one was called Life After the 30-Second Spot, where he looked to the future of how things could be changing post the 30-second spot. Had a lot of predictions back then, some right, some wrong, but that's the nature of predicting the future. And he's got a new book out called Built to Suck, which is, I'm going to let him get into what the premise of Built to Suck is all about. But I'm really intrigued, because he wrote it right before the pandemic, how many of these predictions maybe stayed the same or changed about how he thinks companies were built, and should they be going right or wrong based on all this evolution and transformation that we've gone through in this last year. So with that, welcome to another week of Oh Ship. Joseph, glad you're here. Welcome to Oh Ship.
Hold on, I have to take issue with two things that you've said already, and I haven't even.
Perfect.
Well, we got to discuss being eccentric and the predictions. I don't think any of them have been proven to be incorrect. So you're going to have to
okay.
which ones. I think I'm batting 100. I think.
Are you really? That's impressive.
But funny enough, the eccentric part, I actually addressed it in my monologue, in my show's monologue, and spoke about also, depression, anxiety. I don't suffer from depression. I feel, anxiety might be something else that people have said I maybe need to be medicated for. But for the most part, I've come to embrace this idea of being somewhat eccentric and maybe being somewhere on the spectrum, but I believe, aren't we all? Especially. Aren't we?
Right?
I'll take it. I'll take the eccentric part, but the being wrong part.
No, not going there. Fair enough. We'll have to. We're going to get into some of those predictions today, because I would actually love to talk through some of your favorites, and I'll even fully acknowledge, if you give me some of yours from even back in the day, I'll tell you which ones I would have agreed with back then. I would have to have eaten crow on, and which ones I think I may have been ahead of the curve on. Another thing worth noting, we're gonna put a pin in this and go back to it, but for those of you watching, if you haven't seen Joseph Jaffe's show Corona TV, that was born in, you guessed it, the coronavirus. It's really great. It's actually one of the reasons we reconnected for this. So we're definitely going to get into talking about your show and, frankly, what it means to have even a web show in the post-pandemic age.
And you're going to be on the show as well, so which I'm
looking forward to it. You can poke fun at me. It's going to be great. so let's start with Built to Suck. I think that's the most recent book. I think you've got a lot of bold predictions in there. I'd love to hear, just maybe start with the premise of the book, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So the premise of the book, it's there are 2 parts, right? One is Jim Collins wrote Good to Great, and he also wrote Built to Last. And he did say in his book that visionary companies would not necessarily always be visionary companies, and certainly there were the traits of what constituted a visionary company. But then I used to work for an agency called TBWA Chiat, and Jay Chiat, a founder of the company, said, let's see how big we get before we suck, before we go bad. And the premise is, today, companies, corporations, big brands are not built to last, they're built to suck. But it actually, there was another piece of inspiration. I walked into my daughter's classroom 3 or 4 years ago, and there was this beautiful map on the wall, and it showed 5,000 years of history. The Ming Dynasty, the Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Greeks, the Egyptians, Nazi Germany, and every single one of these empires and dynasties thought they probably could rule the world, and every single one of them is gone, at least as we knew them then. And I thought to myself, if the corporation were an empire or a dynasty or a civilization, how arrogant are we? How hubristic are we to believe that it too would somehow cheat the sands of time? And so the premise of the book is that we are living through right now the end, the demise of the corporate era. And there are many other parts to it, right? That the business model of big business is broken. Why? Because the very thing that helped them grow, which was size, scale, economies of scale, efficiencies of scale, being a global network, is now the albatross around its neck, because they've become too big, too slow, too siloed, too political, too dysfunctional. They are slowing down when the world is speeding up.
This would be an oh shit moment calling Joseph Joey, but we'll take it because it's oh shit. This is how we roll here. Definitely check out his book.
The ship is going to hit the fan. I know no one's ever said that on the show, but still.
So yeah, perfect. The oh ship in action. It's the joy of being live. We're doing it live, damn it.
Exactly. Exactly.
All jokes aside there, look, I mean, this is clearly something that I'm also really passionate about. I love that you connected it back to these Jim Collins books, which I've also read and am really a big fan of. But you're right, all these things that this kind of infrastructure that was driving growth before, I think was already starting to be disrupted by you start things like these kind of exponential organizations. Some of the other great books that are out there that have whether it's systems and infrastructure, scalability through on-demand workforces, and so on. But what's your take on the impact of? I mean, you wrote it. It came out just before the pandemic, right? I think it came out just
probably about just a year before, and already, I mean, on the cover of the book, which I just happen to have here. I mean, what a coincidence! But if you actually look on the cover, you can see what I call the corporate apocalypse. And you'll notice there's Toys R Us, and there's BlackBerry, and there's Kodak, and Blockbuster. But there's also Sears and J.C. Penney. And then, of course, to be a little bit even more provocative, you'll see McDonald's, P&G, GE, although I've changed the names and the logos to protect the guilty. But there are a couple of things, right? Here are three things I didn't even write about in the book. One is creative destruction. Two is diseconomies of scale. I wish I had. And three is this is essentially what it's called is giganticism. That actually being so big that you actually cannot move quick enough, and that it actually becomes a physical ailment. And Bob Leardes, who's the head of the ANA, actually he took a different parallel. He didn't look at the analogy of the dynasty or the civilization. He just looked at age. And I just want to say very quickly, there's a bit of irreverence and chic in the book because that's part of my style. But I actually said, every good apocalypse, or corporate apocalypse in this case, needs 4 horsemen. And so the 4 horsemen are size, which we've discussed, age. Why age? Because the question was asked to me, what about Facebook? What about, Google? What about Amazon? Do they suck? And the answer is, if they don't, they'll, and
they will.
And Facebook already does, but they will. And, just before the book came out, Jeff Bezos spoke. He called that all hands meeting. And he said, one day, I mean, this is his quote, one day we will go out of business. One day we will go bankrupt. Your job is to delay that for as long as possible. And I thought like that was my validation. If he could say that about Amazon, I mean, is there one company on this planet that wouldn't apply to? And then I'll just tell you very quickly, horseman number 3 is being a public company. It is the kiss of death, being beholden. Short corporations today, you're going to love this one, Freddie. They suffer from a CTD, which is a corporate transmitted disease, and it's chronic, which is called short-termitis. And, it is the trap of being locked into these quarterly earnings. And then the final horseman is culture, or the lack thereof. And, look, listen, don't shoot the messenger. These are tough times for large corporations. And when COVID hit, which is your question before, what really happened is wherever they were just accelerated. So if they were on their way out of town, that was accelerated. People have said that COVID was the chief transformation officer or even the chief acceleration officer. And I don't believe it was, I don't believe it was digital transformation. I don't even believe it was digital acceleration. It was what I call digital catch up. That's all. It was just the ability, the good good companies were fine. The bad companies were trying desperately just to get back to level footing.
You could argue that it was just digital became a necessity. So if you were a laggard, survival was a non-option. So to your point, did people get ahead? Yes, some companies transformed and went massively ahead, but a huge chunk of them, transformation meant they finally just caught up with the rest of us, and everyone became digitally enabled.
And that's digital catch up. But inherent with everything is the actual fundamental business model and revenue streams. And by the way, it doesn't just apply now to brands and marketing. It applies to real estate. It applies to education and the future of colleges. Everything has been rethought, even the future of cities. With respect to kind of looking back over the last 12 months. So I'm proud of this book because this book, it doesn't pull punches, but it's also not necessarily about the death of, just like life after the 30-second spot. So there is a future, there is a way out, but it does go through a very cathartic, what I call embracing your heresy. Are you prepared to put yourself out of business? Are you prepared to address these inconvenient truths? And then and only then, I laid out the table of 4 growth pillars, which is digital disruption, not catch up, not acceleration.
Are you proposing that this is the antidote to saving yourself from sucking? I just want to make sure we're framing this up.
Properly. I do say that the key to success is to suck less, but that's just the short-term solution. No, it does have to involve a not even cathartic, but sometimes a shock to the system. And it begins with this idea of, are you prepared to put yourself out of business, to slaughter the cash cow? Because it's only by doing that and going to that point of death that rebirth can occur.
Yeah. It's staring over the precipice, if you will. Yeah, I just want to quickly go back to a point you made earlier that really resonated with me. When I joined Sapient, that was the first time I'd ever worked for a publicly traded company. Profound personal transformation for me. One of the best things that I ever did in my career. I'm very thankful for it. So I'm just prefacing that by giving a little bit of critique. One of the things that I saw there, because I'd never seen a publicly traded business before, worked within it. I think it would be around 3,500 people when Chameleon Collective joined them. It was 13,000 something when I left. This is before the Publicis acquisition, all that stuff. But just, they were hiring at some point 900 people a quarter. I mean, 10x multiples of my agency. They were just hiring that like every quarter. And I remember saying, look, I'm really worried about this. I'm worried about the culture, which was also one of your pillars. And I said, this you can't maintain the culture if you inject that much new personalities and so on into the business. But I also felt like we were so handcuffed by the Wall Street and by the shareholders and the impact of, God forbid, we didn't grow at some insane growth rate for a consecutive quarter, that it really forced you to make really bad decisions about the company. It wasn't the smart move because you were to your point, you just had to make these kind of short-term decisions. And I would argue, and I'd be interested in your take, that to make this big transition from the levers that drove the companies of yesterday to the businesses that are going to be successful tomorrow so they can avoid sucking, you need some long-term vision. And publicly traded companies are just not well to this position for that.
Yeah, I had a guest on the show who basically said companies are broken at scale. He said at scale, cracks become chasms. And so they've been exposed for the most part. And so I said, but how, I asked the question and his response to me is they've got to be able to, act small even though they're big. And so one of my heresies, this isn't in the book, but I came out with it later, is that there should be term limits for corporations, after which they should be one of the 3 Ds, which is either, dissolved, which is bad for everyone, right? 2 is dissected, which is kind of good, the ability to break into smaller pieces. Either you do that voluntary or the government will do it for you. But the third one is disrupted. And that is transformational. That is about invention and reinvention. So there are clues and there are ways to navigate through this rough time. But to your point, when you think of, we've seen the Business Roundtable come out and say, the purpose of a corporation is to satisfy all stakeholders, not just external shareholders. And now we're hearing, regenerative capitalism and conscious capitalism, but we're also seeing that, the DTCs, the direct to consumer startups and upstarts coming out of the woodwork and building in philanthropy and building in cause, and building in some mission-based, vision, to your point, right? Longer term vision into the actual core of the business model, right? Whether it's Tom's Shoes or Bombas or Warby Parker, the idea of buy one, give one. And that is hard. It's hard to retrofit strategy, and it's also hard to retrofit revenue. But it is a survival, tactic right now. It is imperative for survival.
I agree. And so when you think back at, I don't think we answered this one clearly, and I just want to make sure I heard it. So when you think back to the predictions that you had made in the book, obviously you were forward looking at the time. Were you surprised at all by the amount of accelerant that was probably applied to some of that thinking in 2020, or you kind of rolled with it as best as you can?
I'm not, I'm not surprised, because, it was this is kind of a bit of an epiphany for me. But when you actually look at, how did I come to this? Well, like you, I've worked for holding companies and corporations, and I've become an entrepreneur. And I've also most recently with my second, so I started a company called Crayon, which I sold, and then my second company was called Evolution, and that's when I really was was bitten by the bug of the startup world. And I talk about this in the book, that we are witnessing and living through the demise of the corporate empire, but we're also witnessing maybe the fifth industrial revolution, which is the entrepreneurial revolution as well. And when you see, it's not just about founders and entrepreneurs and startups and technology, it's the spirit of small business that burns bright. And it's just the power of technology. As I say, if you come from 3 generations of toll booth operators, you are ship out of luck. I was just waiting for that one.
I love it. Thank you. Well done.
You've got an entire business that. So also, how do you unlearn, and then how do you relearn, and how do you go back to school? And it's less about age, and it's more about just being either just set in your ways or lacking certain skills. But then it's funny, because now we live in a world of Clubhouse, and I was actually joking the other day that if you're a stenographer, you're in demand right now to be able to transcribe live what's going on in a room that isn't recorded. So yes, there is, one door shuts, another one opens, but just technology. We've seen this, whether we call it Moore's law or etc. We've just seen that, technology is the great, kind of arbiter. It comes in, it doesn't discriminate, and it just devastates in its path, but it also, in the wake of that destruction, is creation as well.
So I'm going to use this as a nice jumping off point. So one of the things that you said to me as we were catching up recently that I just thought was hilarious, you said you had started dividing your life up in BP, before pandemic, and AP after pandemic, which I again think is hilarious. The BP version, or the AP version of your life introduced Corona TV, your 5-day a week, which I think as a fellow showrunner is incredibly ambitious. So hats off to you. Web show. I'd love to hear how, obviously that was enabled by technology as the great disruptor and let you do something that, was unfathomable kind of, 5 years ago to broadcast it the way you're doing so conveniently. What's that experience like? And what's Joseph Jaffe, I don't even know if it's 2.0. Is it 3.0, 4.0 for you? Because you did such a great job.
Maybe 0.1. Maybe I've gone back to basics. So right, BP, 5-time author, keynote speaker, spoken in just under 50 countries worldwide, living on a plane. I've been executive platinum on American Airlines since 2016, consulting. And then I'm in South Africa visiting my mom, who is doing well, but she's, almost 5 years into a battle with cancer. And the phone rings. Thank you. And the phone rings, and I'm about to actually present. So while I was there, I was giving a presentation, and it's my wife letting me know that she has COVID. And this is March 11th. So I fly back the next day, go straight into quarantine, and just watch every last bit of revenue eviscerate or be, or just was eviscerated, gone. And I was like, it was, I think I could have gone crazy, or gone mad. But a couple of things happened. One is, I knew that I wasn't alone. I knew that everyone was in the same boat. Two, what's important in life, the health and well-being of my family. No one knew what the hell was going on or would be going on. Three, I just instinctively did what I knew how to do, which is to create content, and also to want to help people that were less fortunate than myself. And so that's why I say, like in The Walking Dead, BP, I was like a school teacher. AP, here's my prop. I became
that's awesome.
I brought out the bat. But yeah, so I decided to do a Facebook Live and then do it again, and people responded. And then I was like, okay, maybe I'll just do it every day. How long's this thing going to last for? And then I discovered Zoom, and then a piece of software called StreamYard. And today I interviewed my 214th guest. And honestly, and I'm not
here, you've done that. Incredible.
This is what I was put on this earth to do. This has been a complete reinvention. I discovered my purpose. You would think so when you look at this ugly face. They told me I had a face for radio, but I'm determined to prove them wrong. And so I became what I call a streamie. I became a streamer. I connected with my community, like you are a fellow streamie, and it has just brought joy to my life. And amidst everything, Freddie, honestly, if you guys are out there right now and you want to hire me for consulting, you are ship out of luck, because, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to teach, and I want to do Corona TV, period.
In a total agreement on a side note, O-Ship is one of my favorite times of the week. I'm getting a chance to reconnect with a lot of people that, shame on me for the record, I haven't, reconnected with in years. I've been very blessed. In fact, O-Ship's actually made me realize how incredibly fortunate I've been to make friends and know so many kind of very interesting people. And it was like, I get them on the show to catch up and talk, and then you just kind of go, why did I just call? Why did I just pick up the phone and call them? Why did I have to do this on a live but it's fun. You get to share it.
I want to just build on that because it's a very similar experience. First of all, there was this idea of reconnecting with old friends. Two, there was the ability to make new friends. You can imagine with 214 guests, they're people I've never met before. But the third one was the crazy one. Clients of mine, people in the industry. And suddenly I remember I was on with Chris Brogan for the first time. And I said to him, Chris, I don't think we've ever spent 5 minutes together just talking one-on-one. I don't think we've ever done that before. And here we are for almost an hour. And what I realized, this was like, it blew my mind, which is our clients, our colleagues, have we really taken the time to get to know them, to understand what makes them tick, to understand their past, and so that for me has been this joy, which is to actually take the time to listen and to get to know people that I thought I knew. And that is a lesson for every single person, whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you are a family member, or whether you're a corporate executive.
I love that. On a side note, by the way, you just reminded me, I know Chris Bergen. I don't think I've reached out to him in about 10 years either.
He's going to be coming on the show soon as well.
Yeah, that's too funny. Maybe what a nice guy as well. I hope he's doing well. So I might have to give him.
He's a streamie. He's one of the few people that stayed the course. So he has a show called The Backpack Show. So
yeah,
he's
sure he's running huge numbers on it, knowing him. So with his audience, that's too funny. And then, out of interest, from one streamie to another, anything you've learned for anyone else out there who might be aspiring to do this along the way? What's worked?
Yeah.
What hasn't worked?
I love the question. And the one thing that I'm developing now. When I say developing now, I mean planning to, because oh, by the way, I do a daily streaming show by myself. But it's really a keynote, maybe a book called How I Reinvented Myself During a Global Pandemic, and you can too. And so I will share I'll share two things. One is my mantra for life now, very much affected by the pandemic, is love what you do, be true to yourself, and stay the course. And the second insight is related to that. I got a piece of advice that wasn't even given to me. I just heard it on a panel early into this process. And they said, if you're looking to get into streaming and you're not prepared to commit 2 years right now, no matter what, come hell or high water, you're just going to put your head down and keep going, give up now, stop now. And that liberated me, because here I am, we're coming up to 1 year. And I'm like, I'm only 50% in. And by the way, I could talk about this for hours. Joe Rogan, I'm going to ask you this. I'm going to put you on the spot. It's not. Don't worry, it's not a terrible question. But when Joe Rogan sold or syndicated the Joe Rogan Experience to Spotify, how many episodes of the show had he done? That's my question for you, Freddie.
I'm going to guess over 1,000. I mean, he's super prolific.
So what would your number be?
1,500?
Yep, you're almost exactly spot on. Most people go 300, 400, 500. No, it was about 1,550, pretty much. You know, it's like Price is Right. You win both showcases. But myself, come on down, Freddie Laker. You are the. But I think to myself, 250 episodes. I'm not even bottom of the second here. Let me get my bat. This is just the beginning, and so we struggle with endurance, with patience, with staying the course. That is a superpower now. Whether we call it the 10,000 hours or something else. And one of the things I've actually been doing now is I believe my bigger vision. If there's a bigger, longer term vision, for me, it's very simple. Corona TV. Until or bust. But there's a bigger vision for corporations, which is the next status meeting, the next offsite, the next training or development program. What if it was a show? And so that's what I've actually started to do now, is actually to talk to, and I'm fortunate enough to already have one client, 1.5 clients, where I'm actually now helping them produce a show instead of countering Zoom fatigue and Teams fatigue, because instead of this awful experience that they're going through, and let's be honest, most of these large corporations are not going back to the way things were, at least until 2022. But if you can actually produce it like OSHIP, like Corona TV, with a host, with supers, with comments, to me, this is the new way to connect with one another.
I couldn't agree more. I tell you one of my bit of advice, and you'll think this is odd, but I don't know about you, and I apologize if I've been fidgeting the whole show. I spend so much time, whether it's here streaming or just working in my chair, that my back's been starting to kill me, and I feel like I'm fidgeting around a bit. Do you mind if I show you one of my bowls? Hold on one second. So I got these things now. And this is my bowl. My wife's got her own bowl upstairs. I bought 2 bowls. And I find that sitting on these things and kind of like just stretching around, I do sit on them all day so that when I can normally sit in one of these meetings and kind of have my act together. But yeah, they've been killing me a little bit today. But that's my advice. If you're going to spend this much time producing, shooting these shows, be comfortable.
Well, I can't believe I'm on a show called O-Ship, and the host of the show just offered to show me his balls. So
I mean, my balls in fair. Well,
and you did.
My other bowl is technically upstairs.
I haven't found that, but what did happen for me during this time is I lost 20 pounds. When everyone was putting on weight, I actually got ultra disciplined, and you know I am. It's crazy for me. I am at my desk at before 7 a.m. and I'm sitting here at about 11 until 11 p.m. every night. Maybe the workload is huge, but also because I want to be here. And one of the things I've said to people now, as a lot of my guests are talking about, work life and etc. What percentage of your pre, your BP, your before pandemic life, your work life, were you joyous? Were you happy? Were you truly just, there's that old saying, which is no one ever said on their deathbed, I should have spent more time in the office. And I reject that idea. Einstein died still creating, just his last breath. So I think life is so short. You've got to love what you do, whether it is in the office, out the office, at home. And these days, everything is just blurred, together as well. And so funnily enough, so, I lost weight. I was running. I was loving it. I got injured. I started feeling the heaviness. Now I've become a bit of a Peloton maniac or machine. Yeah. I also was going through a half a bottle of red wine every day, and I've been very honest and vocal about it.
A glass or two, but I heard that's not true anymore. So,
but I've cut that down to 1 glass. I'm sleeping better. I'm experimenting with meditation. I'm just mixing it up, and that's the thing, Freddie. You asked me about lessons. I make mistakes all the time, but initially in the first part of this, I got very. I'm my own worst enemy. I'm a perfectionist. When I had a bad show or there was technical difficulty, I just wanted to bang my head against the wall. Now I've learned how to forgive myself. And my lesson as a creator now is if you don't have a bad show, how on earth are you ever going to know what a good show is?
Yeah. And honestly, I think going back to the concept of being a streamer, I think, look, screwing it up, it's part of life. I think it makes you more human. And no one wants this overproduced stuff anymore. So being comfortable physically, being healthy, and being comfortable in your own skin is huge.
Yeah.
I want to pivot to one last thing that I think is super interesting, just being conscious of time today. I got wind that you have come out with your own cryptocurrency. It is called Jaffe's, is that right?
The Jaffe.
The Jaffe, my funny accent. So tell me all about this. Obviously, crypto being a huge thing in the news right now. I'm dying to know what it is, what you use it for, and how you've made that possible.
So it's early days right now, but the best way I would set this up is there is no universal currency. There is no monetization revenue stream or even business model for creators until now. And within crypto, Rally.io came out with what they've called their creator coins. And I truly believe through micro payments, first of all, there is precedent, right? When we look at Kickstarter or we look at Patreon, we've started to see tiered levels, experiential levels, what I call priceless experiences built into some kind of a compensation for products, for ideas. And in this case, from a creator standpoint, I can accept tips. I can eventually I'll be able to give live shout outs on the air, and I'll be able to even flash on screen when people are tipping me. I can also do things like send someone a signed copy of the book in exchange for 30 Jaffe coins, or 30 minutes with me, a one-on-one, a mentoring session in exchange for Jaffe coins. And so I actually have a little offer for people that are watching O-Ship, which is if you actually go to my link tree. Link, you can see it. You can see it in the comments, I'm sure. But linktree.com/JaffeJuice. You can actually, you have to buy $30 worth of Jaffe coins, and then send it to me, and you have 30 minutes with me to use for brainstorming, advisory, etc. So the funny thing, Freddie, about it is, I actually, talking about predictions, I wrote about what I called universal currency in Flip the Funnel 10 years ago. And I said that every brand should have its own currency. Why currency? Because currency has an exchange value. You buy it, you sell it, you hold it, you gift it, you redeem it, you exchange it. And so, Coca-Cola could have a ribbon, and Nike could have a swoosh, and Cisco could have a chip, or whatever the case may be. But I had no idea that this would actually become, in a way, the operating system for creators. And so whether it's Clubhouse, whether it's YouTube, and look, you've seen it on TikTok where you can buy, we're seeing all these mechanisms, but what crypto does is it connects the dots across everything as well. And so it's great because, it's not, the thing about the Jaffe, look, you can buy it and you can hold it, and hopefully the value associated is going to ascend. But it's really the ability to recognize that I can create my own little mini or micro branded economy. And eventually, Jaffe coins will be the only way that you can buy a keynote from me, or a training program, or quite frankly, access. Let's just say I've got the great Freddie Laker coming onto my show, and I've got an after show. Maybe the only way to get to cut the line or to get into the VIP meet and greet with Freddie is through Jaffe coin. So the best is yet to come. I mean, we are at the absolute beginning of this.
Fascinating, by the way. And so when you look at this kind of recent trend around using blockchain, obviously with digital art and music, which has just been massive lately, could you imagine, I don't know, maybe could they, I'm just riffing here, but could the coin be tied to your publishing rights, like owning some form of intellectual property, so that there's not only time as being one of the assets, but literally they're investing in part of the value that is the world of Jaffe.
Well, I'm not going to profess to even remotely understand this, the space. But now everyone's talking about NFTs, non-fungible tokens. And I'm starting to see really interesting use cases with respect to, imagine the concept of a first edition, or art is another great example. And so, yes, I mean, the concept of priceless experiences is, what I'd, and obviously I know MasterCard has that as a tagline, but it's a phrase that I used with universal currency in Flip the Funnel. And my definition of a priceless experience is something that money can't buy. It is access. And access, ironically, the one thing the big brands have is access. So I'll give you just a simple example. The Weeknd performed at halftime, at the Super Bowl. Imagine being able to then do a meet and greet or a VIP session before or after, using this currency and this new way of being able. And of course, there are two things, right? One is something that is repeatable, something that doesn't really have a physical value. And IP is the perfect example. And the other are these once in a lifetime experiences, or once in a lifetime moments. So to me it's just absolutely fascinating. And one of my the sayings, my mantras, is Walt Disney's. He said, if you can dream it, you can do it. And all you have to do is dream. All you have to do is dream and be prepared to be wrong, or to fail, or to pivot, or to course correct. But that is our gift. Our gift is to be an absolute, limitless dreamer right now. And it is hard for the corporation, coming full circle, because they want best practices, and they want research, and they want T's and C's, and they want governance, and they're in the risk mitigation business. And as that old saying goes, things change slowly, and then they change instantly and overnight. And you can find yourself on the wrong end of history if you're not prepared, to be at least actively leaning in to this brave new world.
I think, it's obviously, I think as the price of Bitcoin goes up and people can feel intimidated by that kind of concept, frankly, because a lot of people feel like they're supposed to own one Bitcoin and not fractions of it. But I'm not a big, I had a bunch of Bitcoin. I sold a bunch of it way too early on a side note. But I think this whole cryptocurrency blockchain space, you're right. People need to be playing with it, and and there are plenty of entry points to go and create technology, to go buy into technology, just to play with even the technology, because I don't think this is one that people want to get on the wrong side of. This is very much like early internet technology. This is not a fad. It may be early days, but having a strong fundamental understanding of how to work with these technologies, where they're going, what they may lead to, I think could be quite valuable, frankly, both personal, intellectual stimulation, but also professionally. I know that because of my, early adoption of internet technologies, that served me very well throughout my career. I think there's a similar type of opportunity here for people that have inquisitive minds and want to tap into it.
But I think also that is exactly what you and I have always had in common. You also saw, that RFK quote, right? There are those who see things and ask why, and then those who see things that could be and ask why not. We saw the power and potential, the what if, as it related to digital. You got to go back to those early days to really understand fundamentally, the game-changing technologies were the website, was email, was search. I still believe fundamentally the biggest disruption in our marketing lives is search, pull versus push. Nothing has come close to that. But then, when you look at, there's a brilliant video that I think sets up crypto, and Elon Musk tweeted it out, and it basically involves like some kind of primitive, caveman type of existence, where somebody comes up to buy, I don't know, like newt's heads or something like that, and the other merchant says that'll be half a chicken, and he goes, mate, you're in luck. I've got this new thing. It's called gold. And he's like, what the hell is that? Can I eat it? And he's like, no. He's like, well, what can I do with it? Can I wear it? No, you don't understand. And it's so brilliant, because you can imagine what gold was then, crypto is now. And we've seen it. We've lived through it every time. I mean, when I was at Shire Day, I would be walking down the corridor, and the traditional account directors, the account directors, they would see me and they would walk the other way. They would pretend like they didn't make eye contact, because, oh God, here comes the digital guy.
Yeah. I went through that.
Change everything, and broadband, yada, yada, yada. And that's not going to work for Kmart. That's not going to work for Absolute. People need to drink in the real world. And we've just seen everything that's happened. And so what I've learned is, you can look at this as Groundhog Day. You can look at this as a broken record. But I look at it and say, we've seen this before. We know how this ends. So how many second, third, fourth, fifth chances do we want to get it right?
I actually, speaking of knowing how this ends, I think that is actually a perfect place to wrap up today's episode. I think, everyone, I hope, gotten very inspired by Joseph and a lot of his great thinking. If you haven't gone and checked out his books, you really should go check them out, especially Built to Suck, his latest book. Really interesting stuff, and quite prescient in many ways. Also, if you haven't checked out Corona TV, check it out. And if you're interested, or even just learning about cryptocurrencies, go check out the Jaffe. And you can get all of that going to his minutes. Yeah.
And by the way, $30 US for 30 minutes with me. The thing is, I may as well even, it's essentially giving it away for free. But this is the point. Part of the point, is you lean into experimentation. you reward first mover advantage. And that's why, if there's one message to, like, executives or brands out there is don't be a spectator. Don't sit on the sidelines and wait for someone else to make the first move. Roll up your sleeves, and actively experiment, ask questions. I'll say my last point is, it's a little bit self-deprecating, but I say you can't read about all of this in a book, except mine. No, I'm kidding. Even mine. This is not theory. This is about real life now. Go and experience it.
You know what? Actually, I'm going to commit right now I'm going to grab 30 minutes of your time. Frankly, I want to screw around with your cryptocurrency, but on top of that, I want to tell you all about this crazy new business, Chameleon Collective, we built, and the very disruptive business model that it's built on. I think you're going to kick out of it.
I've had Sean on the show, and I got to tell you, you've always been. By the way, when you come on to Corona TV. Not only am I not going to challenge you, but you're going to feel like the most loved person on this planet, because my entire show is about my guests, and I love what you guys. I mean, I know I'm on your show now, but I love what's going on right there. It is, there are so many interesting new models in terms of what we actually called it, instead of the flipped classroom, the flipped conference, the flipped event, the dynamic Hollywood model for talent. You always were ahead of your time, Freddie. And so, like, I celebrate and salute you. But still buy the 30 minutes. Now you've got to buy the 30 minutes.
I'm still going to do it. I've already committed. So, Joseph, thanks again for coming on. This was great fun. I knew it was going to be awesome. For those of you who tuned in, I hope you had a great time and learned some interesting things and left inspired. This is something I do for passion. It's something I do for love. I don't try and monetize the show, but I really appreciate all the support. So anything you can do, give it a like, share it on your social feeds, tell a friend, and hopefully I'll see you here next week. Thank you so much for tuning in to Oh Shit, and I'll see you around.
Take care, everyone.